Welcome, everybody, back to the Big Book Roundtable and the RICO 12 Family of Recovery Resources. We're grateful that you're here. Everybody's welcome. Everybody's welcome who suffers from the disease of alcoholism, whatever you name that, whether you call it codependency, whether you call it sexaholism, whether you call it gambling addiction, whatever it is. You're welcome here. And we are addressing all of these things as we read and deep dive into the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous with David G. and Nikki M., my cohorts around this virtual roundtable. I'm Justin B. I am a son of an all-powerful, all-loving God and a multidisciplinary addict who qualifies for lots of fellowships. And I'm grateful to be here, like I mentioned, with David G. and Nikki M. David, why don't you introduce yourself real quick?
Yes, thank you, Justin, so much for your service. And thank you, Nikki, a.k.a. Allie, for being here as always. I'm David G. I'm an alcoholic addict of many sorts from Oklahoma. Grateful to be at this roundtable today. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Nikki, you're up.
Hi, I'm Nikki, a.k.a. Allie from Al-Anon, because I got my Al-Anon on fire today with my guys at the table. I'm just a grateful member of so many programs. I made my way in through that because I love to change people and take them hostage. But through this process, I've learned that only God's going to change all of us. And I'm grateful to be reminded every day when I'm in this book and every week when I'm at this table with you two spearheads. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, David. Happy to have you both here. Today, we're going to continue our reading. So we've been reading in chapter 2, There is a Solution. But at the in this last reading, and actually two of the last couple of readings we've done, there's been an asterisk on pages 27. Pages 27 and also on page 25 that refers us to appendix number 2 entitled Spiritual Experience. And today we're going to go back to page 567 and 568 and read this second appendix entitled Spiritual Experience. And we're going to comment on this. Now, this is following up on the readings we've just done, and it flows very smoothly into it. So I'm going to start our reading here. All right, page 567, Spiritual Experience. The terms spiritual experience and spiritual awakening are used many times in this book, which, upon careful reading, shows that the personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism has manifested itself among us in many different forms. Yet it is true that our first printing gave many readers the impression that these personality changes or religious experiences must be in the nature of sudden and spectacular upheavals. Happily for everyone, this conclusion is erroneous. In the first few chapters, a number of sudden revolutionary changes are described. Though it was not our intention to create such an impression, many alcoholics have nevertheless concluded that in order to recover, they must acquire an immediate and overwhelming God consciousness, followed at once by a vast change in feeling and outlook. Among our rapidly growing membership of thousands of alcoholics, such transformations, though frequent, are by no means the rule. Most of our experiences are what the psychologist William James calls the educational variety, because they develop slowly over a period of time. Quite often, friends of the newcomer are aware of the difference long before he is himself. He finally realizes that he has undergone a profound alteration in his reaction to life, that such a change could hardly have been brought about by himself alone. What often takes place in a few months could seldom have been accomplished by years of self-discipline. With few exceptions, our members find that they have tapped an unsuspected inner resource which they presently identify with their own conception of a power greater than themselves. Most of us think this awareness of a power greater than ourselves is the essence of spiritual experience. Our more religious members call it God consciousness. Most emphatically, we wish to say that any alcoholic capable of honestly facing his problems in the light of our experience can recover, provided he does not close his mind to all spiritual concepts. He can only be defeated by an attitude of intolerance or belligerent denial. We find that no one need have difficulty with the spirituality of the program. Willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness are the essentials of recovery, but these are indispensable. And then it ends with a quote from Herbert Spencer, and here's that quote. There is a principle which is a bar against all information, which is proof against all arguments, and which cannot fail to keep a man in everlasting ignorance. That principle is contempt prior to investigation. Okay, so we've just gone through this second appendix, spiritual experience. I'd like to get some insight, some experience, strength, and hope from that reading. Let's start with David. What are your thoughts on this reading?
Well, thank you, Justin, and thank you for this meeting, and thank you for the reading. This is such a powerful part of the book. We've been talking about this for some time now, since page 23, that this is what it's going to take in order for us to recover. I say it all the time, there's a difference between getting sober and recovering from the disease of alcoholism. Big difference between those two. And if I am going to have an experience with the Spirit, now based on former ideas and experiences and concepts and beliefs, that hadn't really ever been a very good thing from what I had seen. So when Justin starts out the reading, it says the terms. Now on page 47 of the book, we're going to look at an exercise called spiritual terms. Now, if these two words doesn't appear in that, prayerfully, I might need to go back and take a look at what these things mean to me, because that's what it says. Do not let any prejudice you may have against spiritual terms deter you from honestly asking what these things mean to me. And so that is an exercise. So the terms, and that's all they are. They're just terms, nothing to be afraid of, none of that. The terms spiritual experience and spiritual awakening are used many times in the book, which upon, key word here, careful reading, and I think that's where most of us fall short, especially in the beginning. Somebody tells us, go read a chapter or two and then come back and talk to me, and we'll overgo this real quick, and then we'll move on. Well, I'm reading it with the same mind that brought me in. I haven't had an experience yet, so I'm still reading it with a untreated mind. I can't really do careful reading, but upon careful reading, and that's why I read with my guys, through the book. I don't tell them I don't think this is because you can't read or you're not intellectually smart or any of that. I just don't think that your mind is in a place to receive the information which is given here. Our book says it shows a personality. It doesn't tell. I can tell you about a personality change all day, but if I don't show that to you in my actions, then I probably haven't had this experience. You probably need a different sponsor. And I can tell you that I've fell short of this many times throughout the years. Thank God today I'm not. It shows that the personality change sufficient to bring about recovery. See, not just getting sober, not just getting clean, not just losing whatever it is. It's a personality change. We've seen ideas, emotions, concepts, and beliefs on page 27. They have to be cast to one side, and then suddenly a new set comes in and begins to dominate. And this is kind of following up on what that was talking about back there. And it says it's manifested itself among us in many different forms. So it presents itself. It shows itself. I can see that in Justin. I can see that in Nikki. I can see that in my wife. I can see that in other people who have had this experience. So I like what he says. It's true that the first printing gave many readers this impression that, and notice how he's going to use many different words to say the same thing. Personality changes, religious experiences, they're the same. Maybe in the nature of a sudden, spectacular upheaval. Happily for everyone, this conclusion is bullshit. And the first couple chapters, and we did read this. We looked at Bill, and we looked at his experience and that white light experience. We looked at the man and we agnostics, Jim. And, we've looked at several others who had this sudden revolutionary change. And he says, though it was not our intention to create that kind of impression, many of us have nevertheless concluded in order to recover, we must acquire an immediate and overwhelming God consciousness. That's the same thing as a personality change. That's the same thing as the nature of a sudden and spectacular upheaval. Immediate and overwhelming. I love this. Followed at once by a vast change in feeling and outlook, because the way I felt and the way that I seen things was completely wrong, even after I'd been in the rooms for a long, long time. So this experience is recovering from beliefs, ideas, concepts, and attitudes. And I thought it was to recover from alcohol, to get sober, to recover from drugs, sex, lust. My sponsor said, how long have you been sober now, David? And I said, yeah, about 25 years. He was like, well, I promise you, you don't need to do any more to recover from drinking and using and lusting and sex. You've done that. But what you haven't recovered from is the ideas that drove you to do those things. And that's what I began to learn through the process. So I like what you read, Justin. Quite often, friends of the newcomer, people were aware of this long before I was. They seen the difference. They seen the fruits of the Spirit in the meeting. They heard it in my voice. I was invited to speak more and more and do different things with the fellowship. But he finally realizes, man, that realization, that final realization that I've undergone a profound alteration in my reaction to life, not how much I drank or didn't drink anymore. My reaction to life, that could hardly have been brought about by myself. That was God with skin. And I like what it says. What often takes place in a few months could have seldom been accomplished by years of self-discipline. So if you turn those words around like we've been doing in a lot of this, that means the discipline of self. And the longer I tried to do that, the worse it got. I cannot discipline myself to do spiritual practices. I may read a little bit, I may do this or that, but I fall off of that pretty quick. And then I start living my own life. And the next thing you know, I'm out the door again. So I did tap into an unsuspected inner resource, a power greater than self. He calls it awareness. He calls it power. He calls it essence. He calls it God. He calls it all these things there in that paragraph. It's all terms. We're going to look at those terms and look at what these honestly mean to you. And if they've meant something that you have held on to for 25 years like I did and it didn't work, it's a good idea to get rid of that shit. You don't have to continue to hold on to that. We're here to recover from our beliefs. So I love the saying by Herbert Spencer. And I find myself even guilty of that as I've been sober, judging people or circumstances or situations before I know the whole truth about it. Today, I try not to do that. I just don't. It's not important. I don't really care. As long as you and I can go through this book together and have an experience, then I think that's what God has intended for us to do, is to wake up and to help our brother to do the same. Thanks.
Thank you, David. Good stuff in there. Nikki, what are some of the things that, as we read through that jumped out at you?
Oh, well, David, thank you so much. You just went through that so clear cut and precise. At the top of my page, I wrote literally the difference between the spiritual experience versus the spiritual awakening, because that's what they're talking about on this page. And spiritual experience is what they talk about, a personality change. And I love what it says here, where it says different forms. See, my line out says, we all have our different experiences with this power. Remember, I come from a world where I'm busy comparing myself to you. I'm busy looking at you. And here, this is saying it's different forms. We read it on page 22. Our behavior patterns vary. So if our behavior patterns vary, wouldn't our experience with this power vary too? And I love the next where David said, it's erroneous, it's bullshit. I have wrong, it's incorrect, because everyone, again, I'm so busy comparing myself to, well, they do that, they do this. I don't do that. That's why the drunkalogs, when we're hearing speakers, aren't always so great. I know they say to look for the similarities, but many times I want to hear what is happening here in this book, in this lifestyle, because so much of it varies. And I've seen people go to the room, sex addict, for example. But you exchange love for sex. And when I break a woman down who's been with one partner her whole life, you're not sleeping around with different people, but you will die, and you exchange love for sex, then it's just also different. Then the next paragraph, I just wrote on that one, we're in the next few chapters, sudden revolutionary changes. That's what Bill had experienced. And I have not had that. I had it one time. I had a sudden revolutionary change around my money in year 8. I worship money. And COVID hit and all these things happened. I'll never forget. I dropped to my knees and I realized I've talked about it, I think, on our podcast. It was How to Listen to God, Wally P. And in it, he said, nothing is yours, like your material, nothing. And even my children aren't mine. They just come through me, according to Kahil Cabran. I'm just a pointer to where they go. So there's lots of books on that. Nothing you own is mine. So I had that one time with the money, but everything else has been the next paragraph, what William James calls the educational variety. because mine developed slowly we're in year 12, over 12 years. And yes, many of my friends see the newcomer, Nikki. They see it in me. And this is a big promise, everybody. I think this is the biggest promise in the book. If you have not had a profound alteration in your reaction to life, then there is a problem. See, when COVID hit, I had a profound reaction, right? In a profound alteration in my reaction to life. Normally I'd freak out. I would have done some really weird stuff. I did the opposite of what I would normally do. My deportment shouted at everyone, this is a woman with a real answer. And I've years of self-discipline. Oh my God. I'm a retired burlesque entertainer. Do you know how many yo-yo experiences I've been on by discipline? You know, if I only do this, do that. Never worked. Never. That's back to the human aid list. And I love this. I tap. That's a key word. You just have to tap it. It says you tapped a source of power much greater than yourself. We just have to tap it. We don't have to be consumed fully in it. You just have to tap this power. That's how strong it is. And it's inner resource. This is inside. You're not going to tap it in another person in a bottle. It's inside. The problem's inside. The solution's inside. And I love this part. We find that no one, mine says, including Nikki, I don't have to have difficulty. This is a spiritual program. Everybody, you'll hear us talk about God and all these different, I mean, the three of us at this table come from very different experiences and religious and non-religious views, spiritual views. We are open to all concepts. And so that's what they're asking you to do. Be open to all concepts, everybody, Sufis, Muslims, natives, Rastas, Jews, Muslims, Christians, crystal. Hey, you crystal people, you know, those fairy crystal. I have a girl, she just lives off crystals. Do it. And your beads. I love that stuff because you just have to be willing, honest, and open-minded. They're essential. And essential means I have to have it. I have to have these things. And if you don't know what indispensable means, your sponsor cannot dispense the willingness to you. You cannot go to the pot shop and get willingness and honesty dispensed to you. You can't go to the pharmacy. You can't go to grandma. They are indispensable. And I'm a loser without these things. And I'll just give my experience, strength, and hope, contempt prior to investigation. Okay. I used to judge. I used to lay at home and watch. This is before cable and all that stuff. You guys are my age, so you get it. Young people, there were TV shows, no cable. And I would go, how can a dancer, I was 18, how can a stripper be a mom? How dare they do those? You know, you judge people. Well, God put a 6-inch stiletto on me. And I was a burlesque entertainer for, oh God, a long time, 7 years. And I know how a burlesque entertainer, anybody in that trade or that industry can still be a good mother. So I had contempt once God put the shoe on me. So let God put the shoe on you here, my friends listening. Please stay here. As we all say at this table, come all the way in and stay, because until you investigate what this lifestyle for a lifetime is all about, you know, have God sit on your tongue, because we've all had a profound alteration in our reaction to life because of this way of living. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. All right, I've got a couple of questions for one for each of you. David, the question I have for you, and it's actually a request here. Are you willing to go through a line or an example of this spiritual terms exercise that you do with your sponsees with us? Just kind of an example of what that looks like.
Yeah, absolutely, Justin. And, you know, I do have templates for this and different things. You know, when I do the workshops, I always do these. And on page 47 of the book, this is where this exercise is laid out. Now, there's another one just before that on page 46, but it's a reflection exercise. But this is actually one that we do. And so, top of 47, when therefore we speak to you of God, we mean your own conception. And this applies to other spiritual expressions, which you may find in this book. And we just read a couple of them over there. One of them is spiritual experience. Do not let any prejudice you may have against spiritual terms deter yourself from honestly asking yourself what they mean to you. Now, if you drop back to almost the bottom of page 46, he's going to give you a few examples of what these spiritual prejudice may be. When you see in the bold letters, creative intelligence, spirit of the universe, totality, possession, for me, prayer, meditation, God, devil, heaven, hell, marriage. For me, it was Jesus Christ, Holy Spirit, Son. All of these things, I made a list of all of these things that really rubbed me when I would hear somebody talk about that kind of stuff. And so through the years, those were the things that really, really bugged me. And so my sponsor had me to take a sheet of notebook paper, draw down the middle of it, a line, almost like two columns, left and right. And on the left, I would write the things, the spiritual terms that I had prejudiced against. And I named some of them there. Now, he said, on the other side, I want you to ask yourself what these honestly mean to you, not look up in the dictionary and see what the word means. What does this honestly mean to you? So just a quick example is Jesus Christ was a big one. I'm from the South. I'm from the Bible Belt. That was always a big, big deal to me. I hated that. Don't talk that shit to me ever. Kill you for that. And so anyway, as I wrote that down, I began to look at it. I thought, what does this really mean to me? And the things that came to me through doing that prayerfully, I guess my prejudice is that they'd always told me that he'd been whipped and beaten and killed, and it was all my fault. It was my fault that happened. And I just couldn't accept that. And that's okay that I couldn't accept that. So I went on through the rest of them, and here's what I learned from that exercise. This is how that belief had me tangled up for years. What I didn't understand is the people that were teaching these things to me were wounded. They were sick. So they were giving me their version, their experience of what God was, and telling me I must believe by that or else. And so I learned that it wasn't that I hated Jesus Christ, and it wasn't that I hated any of that. I hated the way that they presented him to me, and I couldn't accept that. And that changed my entire life with that exercise right there. Today, I am a Christ follower. I'm not afraid to say that to anyone. I don't do it in a religious way. I don't push that on to people the way that they told me I must do. But I can tell you what, my experience since 2019, and I tried every damn thing, Buddhism, Hinduism, and I learned a lot of good from all of that. There is a lot of good there. But for me, I needed something solid, and that's what I find. I'm gentle. I am humble. I am this. I'm that. I'm this. I want that. I need that. I need that in a power greater than self. So that's only one experience of many. I do have templates on this. I'm glad to get those to you, Justin. If you don't already have them, you put in the show notes. And man, it's just a powerful exercise that I take folks through, and it's a life-changing one as well. So thanks. Appreciate
Love it. Yeah, thank you, David. Yeah, we'll definitely put those templates up or have resources available to send an email. We'll send them out to you. So perfect. Thank you for walking through that, David. That was very helpful. Nikki, the question that I have for you is in relation to the educational variety of spiritual experiences here. I'm an addict, and I'm talking about people who come into the rooms. I want my fix now. I want this experience to happen now because, well, the reaction that I have to my drug of choice or drug of non-choice is immediate. So talk to me about how one can be patient in this process of this educational variety of spiritual experience.
Okay, how can one be patient? Well, number one, you must get a sponsor. One who's armed with the facts. That's how you can be patient. If you're out here listening and you're like, I want this and I want to know how to do this, you have to be armed with the facts. So you need a good sponsor about this disease of addiction, alcoholism, of how about just this mental, like in my country, they'll diagnose me and say, oh, Nikki, you've got, depression. And I will say now, because I'm armed with the facts, no, I've got self-obsession. I'm not really depressed. I just have self-obsession. Nikki, you've got borderline personality disorder. Well, no, I really have the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde syndrome that they talk about on page 21. So I want to arm, I want to give this, again, show them, not just tell them, show them the experience and share my experience, strength, and hope. You asked me, how can I give them, the the willingness, I guess, to stay for this educational variety. Well, I love, and we're going to read it, I think, next time we're together at the round table. But it says here, and this is what I really go home on. It's like page 29 says, each individual in their personal stories, that's my experience, strength, and hope, I need to describe in my own language. My line out says, I speak Big Book, and from her own point of view. And my point of view is my particular attitude and my consideration for certain matters, the way I establish my relationship with God. See, that's what this is about. This is about me explaining to the newcomer how I establish a relationship with God. And they're going to go, well, Nikki, I hate God. Okay, well, do you want to know how I established a relationship with being responsible, with being accountable, with being a better mother and citizen of this world? You're interested in that because you told me you're dying. See, I listen. And so I'm armed with the facts about my sponsee, why they're here, what they need. So if you don't want, you have no power. So don't you want to stay and figure out how to get some power? And then I lead them back into it more. It's like, you've got to be willing and then give them some encouragement. This is in my program, I sign a contract, verbal. It's a verbal contract. It's this. Are you willing to show up and do the work? And I encourage him. Yeah, sponsee, look it. You've showed up and you've done the work. You're here. This is awesome. Are you going to answer with a simple yes and no? This is your honesty. I don't need you to justify, rationalize, or explain anything. Yes or no. And everybody, if you're a sponsor, watch out for the yeah, buts, maybes, kind of, sort of, slightly, just yes or no, simple program. And then I ask them, because you asked me, how do I get them to stay here for the educational variety? Can you be open-minded? Will you lay aside any prejudice, any experience that you've had with any program, inside, outside of these rooms? And will you assess the results for yourself? And if they answer yes to all these questions, then you're ready to have this spiritual, not only, you may not have the experience, but you're going to have an awakening every day. And then what happens when we're here long enough? We have an experience every day, because I never knew squirrels were so cute. And so I get this experience even today, I'm going to meet my friend for lunch right after this. I'm hungry. And it's like, I'm just gonna have the time of my life. Before it would be like, oh, this person needs to be here. My boyfriend's in Luxembourg. My daughter should be here. Like, no, just me and one of God's children. And she's a fellow in the program. So we're going to talk about God.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Nikki. Thank you, David. And so let's do takeaways here. David, what's a takeaway that you have from our conversation and our reading today?
Well, I think page 568, the second full paragraph, and what we read today. Any alcoholic capable of honestly facing this problem in light of our experience can recover. Thank God for that. That's all I need to do is honestly face my problems. And for so long, I skirted around them. I didn't want to tell the whole truth. What will you think of me? All of this kind of stuff, the ego. Oh, I heard this guy talk. I'm going to make that part of my story now. I'm going to talk like he talked, only I'm not going to mention somebody said something, all of this crap. But when I really, really became willing to honestly face my problems in step 4, and shed light on them whenever I spoke it from my mouth in step 5, then I began to recover as well. And I've been sober for a long, long time. Many of you know that from my story. It really doesn't have anything to do with that. Bill had this experience while he was sitting at his kitchen table drinking. I mean, we can have this experience anywhere, anytime. But there is one thing that we have to do, and that's honestly face our problem. So that was my takeaway today. Thanks, Jay.
Thank you, David, for hitting on that. You stole my takeaway a little bit, but that's okay. I'll put my take into it. Nikki, what's your takeaway?
Well, we're all like-minded thinkers here, Justin, because when you asked David G his question, I was like, yeah, how do you do that? So you read my mind. You're reading minds here. We all are. My takeaway is, again, on page 568, of course, the promise. Everybody, please. This is really a great promise. A profound alteration in your reaction to life means when you hear the worst news of your life, you have a profound alteration in your reaction to that news. But let's go deeper here where it says, and I'm going to beg you, because the book says we beg you. And then I think on another episode, I said, we urge you. So we're going to beg and urge. I am. That you do not close your mind to all. Everybody, please circle all, black, white, yellow, green, purple, north, south, east, west, in, out, all spiritual concepts. Please do not close your mind to these things. Because it says, let's just go back to, and I'll end here. I know you just asked me for my final takeaway, but it really does say it on the page that David was on, page 46, where it was, we found that God does not make too hard of terms to those who seek him. To us, the realm of spirit is broad, roomy, all-inclusive, never exclusive or forbidding to those who earnestly seek it. It is open, we believe, to all men. And that comes from Matthew 7, verse 13, 14. Love you guys.
Thank you, Nikki. Yeah, and my takeaway also is on page 568. And I'm going to go from, any alcoholic capable of honestly facing these problems can recover. I'm going to take the side of, but why am I not recovering? As somebody who's like, well, I want to do these things. I think I'm honestly, he can only be defeated by an attitude of intolerance and belligerent denial. Where am I being blocked? Where am I belligerent and in denial here? And I think this exercise that David talked about here of this spiritual terms exercise can really help me define where I'm being blocked. Where am I being belligerent? Thinking that I know, or thinking that this term that I believe is concrete is just actually a disaster. And that's my takeaway, is that I need to be willing, open-minded, so that I'm not belligerently ignorant and intolerant of other things. Everybody, this has been an amazing conversation, spiritual experience, and a spiritual awakening. We hope you've felt that also. Keep coming back. We're going to be closing up this chapter 2 here in the next week, and then moving on to the next one. Work it. You are worth it.